Inshallah ta'ala. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأصلي وأسلم على من بعث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته, brothers and sisters, and welcome to part number 17 of our Quranic synopsis, where we go through the entire Quran juz by juz, covering the contents therein in preparations for Taraweeh for the evening. Although Taraweeh is not going on, inshallah, we hope that all the brothers and sisters watching us are able to go through the Quran in their own time and use whatever we are telling them as a roadmap in order to connect with the Quran just a little bit better, inshallah ta'ala. So in part number 17, we are going to cover two surahs, which is Surah Al-Anbiya and Surah Al-Hajj. Now, yesterday we didn't actually cover Surah Al-Taha, so it'll be fitting for us to touch on it, even if it's just briefly, inshallah ta'ala. So if we go backtrack a little bit, a few pages to the beginning of Surah Al-Taha, we can talk a little bit about this surah. This surah called Surah Al-Taha because of the first ayah, Taha. A lot of sort of difference of opinion as to what the letters of the Quran at the beginning of these surahs mean, like so Alif Lam Mim, Alif Lam Ra, Taha, and all sorts of other sort of variations of these letters at the beginning of surahs. And these are called Huruf al-Muqatta'at, and they come at the beginning of each surah, or at the beginning of many surahs. They don't necessarily have a meaning that is discernible and that is known, because the Prophet ﷺ is not really recorded from him that he has explained any of what these letters mean. So it's hard for anybody to do any type of ijtihad or any type of sort of individual thinking in order to discern what the meanings of these letters are. But there are some ideas as to what they may possibly mean. Taha, we know, is a name of the Prophet ﷺ as well. So it could mean that it was addressing him in the form of nida, ya Taha, ma anzalna alayka al-Qur'an litashqa. We haven't revealed to you this Qur'an so that you can despair. And there are other sort of other reasons as well. But one of the main reasons why these letters were revealed like this is because this Qur'an is bilisanin Arabiyyin mubin. It is in the clear Arabic language. And the Quraysh, they would pride themselves in the fact that they were so lyrically inept and adept at coming up with things linguistically, and being very sort of very eloquent in their rhetoric, that when the Quran was revealed, it was challenged, or they were challenged, that if you can bring a chapter like this, or a book like this, or even a verse like the verses of the Quran, then bring it and use whoever you can from the jinn and from the ins in order to help you do that. And so one of the challenges of the Quran is that, look, this Quran has words in which you understand and which are clear, right? And you still can't bring anything of the like. And it also has letters which you know, which make up the very sort of genetics of your language. And with these letters, Allah can bring them individually, right? And make them a sign for mankind. Yet you cannot, even with these letters, create words that can be signs from mankind. So what are you going to do with mere letters? So that was one of the ways in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala threw the gauntlet down to the Quraysh, and they couldn't answer back even with those letters. So anyway, that's how it starts, Taha. Taha is a Meccan surah. It is one of the earlier Meccan surahs again, and it was around the time, again, like the previous surah, Surah Maryam, it was around the time of the migration to Habasha, which is the 5th year after the Prophet ﷺ first received revelation. So the story behind this is that it was revealed, and the first beginning verses, there is quite a pertinent and quite a nice story behind them as well. So we all hear of the companion Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, the illustrious companion, one of the closest friends of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and one of the most beloved of his companions, and the second Khalifa of the Muslims who came after Abu Bakr, and whose rule was exemplary for all others to follow thereafter, and who was innovative in his style of leadership, but also extremely sort of spiritually connected with regards to how he ruled as well. So he didn't just rule with justice and with authority, but he also ruled with wisdom and compassion to all those that he governed. But it wasn't always the case that Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu was beloved and sort of as close to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as we think of him now. In the beginning, Umar radiallahu anhu was one of the staunchest of opposers to Islam. And he would actually physically beat the people from Bani Adi, which was his tribe, that had accepted Islam. And he used to call them as-sabi'. And as-sabi' is the one who would turn his back on the faith of his forefathers and disgrace his tribe and his family. So he would call them this, and he would beat them. And he would abuse those who had accepted Islam, whether they were from his family and from his tribe or they weren't. And he was very close to a man called Abu Jahl. And Abu Jahl was obviously the staunch enemy up until the point that he died of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his call. So let's draw sort of like a little bit of a picture here as to how this story sort of unfolded. So here we have a guy called Umar. And Umar was a young man at the time this took place. And he was very fiery and very heated. This was at a time when Islam was still very weak, and the da'wah of the Muslims was done in secrecy. So the Prophet ﷺ was only speaking to those who showed a level of interest in Islam and a lack of hostility towards Muslims. And if they had those two qualities, the Prophet ﷺ would approach them and speak to them about Islam and see if they were ready to accept it or not. Some did, some wanted to think about it a little bit more, and some turned away. But this was the general sort of theme of the Prophet ﷺ's da'wah, which was done in secrecy. Then one day, the Prophet ﷺ was in the Masjid al-Haram. He was in the Haram. He was in Mecca, and the Mushrikun of Quraysh and the heads of the Quraysh, so people like Abu Jahl, people like Umayyah, people like many of the heads of the Quraysh. They were all there, and they started to ridicule and throw stones at the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? And really sort of like make fun of him and mock him. And there was a man called Hamza, who was the uncle of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he was sort of well respected and feared amongst the mushrikun of Quraysh. Hamza, he was a hunter, and he was a person who used to go out into the middle of the desert with a few of his companions, and sometimes even on his own, and he would live off the wildlife there and spend weeks on end out in the outback, in the desert, as it were, and occasionally come back to Mecca and spend time with his family and spend time with his companions. So he was known to be hardcore. He was known to be someone who's not messed with. He's known to be someone that if you get on the wrong side of him, you're going to be in big trouble. And he was so well respected that people would go to Hamza in order to sort of get oaths of allegiance with him, that if anything bad happened to them, that Hamza would come to their aid. So that was the kind of guy that Hamza was. And it just so happened that Hamza was coming from his desert expeditions and his hunting to back to Mecca. And on his way back, he passed the Haram, and he saw what was happening to the Prophet ﷺ, his nephew. So he came not because of some love for Islam, because he wasn't Muslim at the time, but because he saw that his own family member was being abused, and he couldn't take that. And one of the most important things to the Quraysh back then was your family ties and your tribal ties. So he came to the Prophet ﷺ's aid, and he went up to Abu Jahl and he punched him in the face, literally, like barefaced, subhanallah, until his face was actually bleeding, his lip was bleeding, and he floored him as well, decked him with one punch, mashallah. So, and everybody was like, whoa. It's like, whoa, this is getting serious now. So they all stopped from what they were doing, and they all like sort of took a step back, and they were like, yeah, Hamza, what's wrong with you? You know, they do not know who this guy is, and you know, he's done this to us, he's done that to us, he said this to us, he said that to us. And he's like, so he tells everybody in their faces that, what would you say if I told you that I was part of his religion? Who will then lay a finger on him? Who will then harm him? And everyone was quiet. No one said anything to him. And so sort of everyone went on their way, and Hamza took the Prophet ﷺ away, and he accepted Islam thereafter. 3 days later, Umar radiallahu anhu, he hears that this has happened, right? Word goes around in all of Mecca that Abu Jahl got punched in the face by Hamza, and word reaches Umar, and Umar is like, he's angry. And if anybody knows the seerah of Umar, when he gets angry, he sees red, and he just goes for it. So this is when he's in Islam. But when he was in Jahiliyyah, he didn't have that same discipline that he had in Islam. So when he got angry, he couldn't, contain himself, and he just went for it. So he heard that this is what Hamza did, and he was so angry that he made firm intention that he's going to kill the Prophet ﷺ because of what he has done to his family, and what he has done to his tribe, and what he has done to his way of life. He has ruined everything. He has turned everything on its head, and he wants things to go back to the way they were, where everybody was, mutual respect between each other, and families were there, and family ties were there, and everything was known and discernible. So he went looking for the Prophet ﷺ. Obviously, they were in Dar al-Arqam, right? And Dar al-Arqam was a secret location that no one else knew that the Prophet ﷺ and his companions would gather there. So he went around Mecca looking for the Prophet ﷺ. There was a man called Nu'aym ibn Abdullah, who was, I think, a cousin of Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, who was Muslim, but only secretly. So no one else knew that he was Muslim except the Muslims themselves. So Nu'aym, he met Umar radiallahu anhu on his way with Umar radiallahu anhu with his sword in his hand. So he sees him and he's like, Wayhaka ya Umar, ila ayna? Where are you going? What's going on? And he's like, Uridu Muhammad. I'm looking for Muhammad and I want to kill him. So Nu'aym is like, oh my God, this is not good. And he knows Umar as well. And he knows that if he decides on something, that there's nothing that's going to stand in his way. And Umar was shadid as well. He could take down 30 men on his own easily. So he was worried now, and he's like, oh no, what can I do to stop him from going to Muhammad? So he tried a number of excuses. And then in the end, he couldn't find any other excuse but to tell him that, look, Umar, you better sort your own house out. You better put the fire out from your own house before you go to somebody else's house and light a fire. And what he meant by that was that his sister, called Fatima, and his brother-in-law, called Sa'id ibn Zayd, they both had entered into Islam, right? And this is a big thing. Umar was like, what are you talking about? What do you mean my house? So he told him that, look, your sister and your brother-in-law, they both become Muslim. So you better sort that out. And obviously he didn't want to expose them like that, but he had no other choice because he's going to find Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he's going to, do something bad to him. And so Nu'aym's like feeling all guilty and stuff, but Umar goes on his way and he goes straight to the house of Fatima, his sister. When he gets close to the house, he hears what he calls hamhama. And hamhama means like a buzz of noises. And what he actually heard was the recitation of the Qur'an. Please turn your phones on silent. Jazakallahu khair. So what he actually heard was the recitation of the Qur'an being recited in the house of his sister. And what was happening was Fatima, his sister, and her husband Sa'id, and another man called Khabbab, I think we mentioned his name yesterday, who went to Wa'il ibn As, and he wanted to get his wages, but he didn't receive his wages because he was being discriminated against because of the fact he was Muslim. That same Khabbab was in the house of these two, and he was teaching them the Qur'an, and he was teaching them none other than this surah, the beginning of this surah, from verse number 1 to verse number 8. Subhanallah. So Umar radiallahu anhu, he starts bashing the door in. Open the door, it's Umar, right? So Khabbab's like, look, you're his sister and his brother-in-law, you may survive, but Khabbab is going to die, so I'm out of here. So he ran to the back of the house and he hid. And they opened the door to Umar, and they tried to hide the sahifa, the bit of parchment that they were reading the Qur'an of, which shows that the Sahaba ridwanullahi alayhim used to write down the Qur'an, even though there's a big misconception that the Qur'an was never written down. So anyway, they hid the parchment from Umar so that Umar wouldn't see. And he came in and he was like, I've heard you've entered into Islam. So he started to, beat up Sa'id and really go for him. And Fatima tried to jump in the middle, tried to break the fight up and get off, what are you doing? And Umar, because all he could see was red, he ended up, giving Fatima one in the face as well. So he ended up hitting her in the face by accident. And when he hit her in the face, he hit her so hard that she herself started bleeding. And when he saw the blood falling from her face, something changed in him and something hit his heart. And he stopped. And Sa'id was like, you know what? We are Muslim. And I don't care if you know that we're Muslim. Do with us as you please, but we're not going to, we're not going to hide it anymore. So Umar radiallahu anhu, he stops and he sees his sister in the situation that she's in. and something moves inside of him. So he stops and, he goes to her and she's like, don't touch me, get away from me. But he's like, look, I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me. Are you okay? And she's like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You don't care about us and whatever. Get away. So he was like, no, look. I'm sorry. What is it? I heard that you guys were Muslim and I got angry, but what is it that you guys were reading? I heard you guys reading something. And in the end, he asked for the piece of parchment that they were reading off. And so Fatima says to him, look, you're najis. You're a mushrik. You're not a Muslim. So you have to go and have a ritual bath, and then you can come back and then you can read it. But until then, you can't read it. Right? And lo and behold, Umar, who's just coming from his intent to kill the Prophet ﷺ, goes now and makes ghusl. SubhanAllah. So he has his ritual bath and he comes back to Fatima and he says, okay, give me the parchment. Let me see it. So he takes the bit of parchment and he reads, Taha, ma anzalna alayka al-Qur'an litashqa. We have not revealed to you this Qur'an so that you can despair. Illa tadhkiratan liman yakhsha. We have sent it as a reminder for those who fear, who are mindful of Allah. Tanzilan mimman khalaqa al-arda was-samawati al-ula. A revelation from the one who created the heavens and the earth, or the earth and the heavens above. Ar-Rahmanu ala al-arsh istawa, the most merciful, who rose above his throne. Lahu ma fi as-samawati wa ma fi al-ardi wa ma baynahuma wa ma tahta ath-thara. To him belongs all that is in the heavens and all that is in the earth, and all that is in between them and all that is underneath the earth. وَإِن تَجْهَرْ بِالْقَوْلِ فَإِنَّهُ يَعْلَمُ السِّرَّ وَأَخْفَى. And if you were to speak openly, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is aware of what you say, what you conceal, and what you reveal. Allahu la ilaha illahu. There is no God but He. Allah, there is no God but He. Lahul asma'ul husna. He has the most beautiful of names. And he stopped there and he said to himself, is this what the Quraysh are fighting against? And he said there and then that he wanted to accept Islam. And so Khabbab, who's been hiding all this time, when he hears Umar saying that, this is amazing, right? Ma ahsana hadha, right? How beautiful is this speech? Khabbab comes out and he says, Wallahi Umar, this is amazing. Because I heard the Prophet ﷺ yesterday make dua to Allah that one of the two Umars will enter into Islam. Either Umar ibn al-Khattab or Abu al-Hakam. And Abu al-Hakam is Abu Jahl, right? His name is Abu al-Hakam, but they called him Abu Jahl because Hakam is wisdom and Jahl is ignorance. He opposed Islam because of his ignorance. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said specifically that he wanted you to enter into Islam. And I hope that this is the Prophet ﷺ's dua being answered, so go to him. He is in Dar al-Arqam. So Umar, he got his sword, right, that he had with him, and he walked to Dar al-Arqam. SubhanAllah. The first time he was looking for the Prophet ﷺ, he wanted to kill him. The second time he's looking for the Prophet ﷺ, in the same day, he wants to embrace Islam. Ajib. All because of these ayat that entered into his heart. Ajib. So he comes to Dar al-Arqam, and Hamza, radiallahu anhu, who accepted Islam 3 days ago, is there, and he can see Umar coming, and he goes to the Prophet ﷺ, he says, look, Umar is coming, mutawashshihan sayfahu. He's come with his sword out, right? So if he wants to, if he wants harm, if he wants evil, then let him come in and I will sort him out, right? And if he wants good, then let him come in and we will also give him that good. So the Prophet said, Da'uhu, let him go, let him enter. So he entered and they Ma ja'a bika ya Umar. He's like, Uridu Muhammadan. Like, what made you come here, Umar? He goes, I want Muhammad. He goes, all right, go to this room. So they put him in this room, in a separate room. And the Prophet ﷺ came in and the Prophet ﷺ grabbed Umar radiallahu anhu by his rida, like this over here. Grabbed him. And he goes, what is it that's made you come to me, Ya Umar? And he said, I wish to testify that there is no God worthy of worship except Allah, and that you are the messenger of Allah. And everyone was like, Allahu Akbar, amazing. Subhanallah. Takbir is going on all over Dar al-Arqam. And because Umar was so, he was so overt, he wasn't afraid. He was, he didn't beat around the bush. He wasn't someone who lied. He wasn't someone who beautified or sort of used kind words. He was straight in your face. He told you how it was. Just like when he was asked by Nu'aym, where are you going? And he said, I'm going to kill Muhammad. He told him straight away. He's not hiding anything. He's not trying to find out where he is or anything like that. You know, he's straight up, what you see is what you get with Umar. So he said to the Prophet ﷺ, why are we hiding, right? You have Hamza, you have Umar, you have these strong people now. Like, why should we be afraid of our Islam? So Umar went out and he sort of, with the rest of the Muslims, and they all went out and they all declared that they were all Muslim. And, you know, the da'wah now officially went into its new stage, which is a da'wah jahriyah, which is open da'wah now, calling everybody openly now. And so Umar radiallahu anhu was actually beaten that day, subhanallah. Right? He was fought from the people of Quraysh. They started to fight him, and he fought them back as well. So he beat up quite a few of them, but he got tired in the end, and he sat down and he said, you know what, do with me as you wish. And so they they all got on top of him and started giving him punches. And that is sort of a humbling thing for Umar. Before this, no one would ever touch Umar, and no one would think to fight against him. But now Umar has accepted Islam, and now he is being humbled to say that, look, you may have all the strength in the world, but this message requires more than just strength in body. It requires a firm conviction and iman. And that can only come if you are willing to face adversity head on. And so Umar radiallahu anhu, he faced that adversity on the first day. And in fact, on that first day, he went to Abu al-Hakam's house. He went to Abu Jahl's house, sorry. And he knocked on the door, right? And just yesterday, he was the best friend of Abu Jahl, and he was willing to defend his honor for being punched in the face by Hamza. Now he's going to his house. So he knocks on his door, and Abu Jahl opens the door. He's like, Umar, how are you doing? Yabn al-Khattab, enter. How's everything? Everything okay? It's good to see you. And Umar's like, I just came to tell you that I have entered into Islam, and I have believed in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and everything that he has come with. And he's like, قَبَّحَكَ اللَّهُ وَقَبَّحَ مَا جِئْتَ بِهِ. It's like, may Allah cause you to be ugly, and everything that you have come with is the disgrace. Get out of my face. And he closed the door on Umar and kicked him out of his house, subhanAllah. But anyway, that's the story of the Islam of Umar, and that was the munasabah of this particular section of this surah. Then from surah ayah number 9 to about 98, it is the story of Musa alayhi salam. And it is so beautifully told, and it takes up such a large chunk of this surah. Now in it are similarities. The reason why, and it seems like rather an abrupt shift from the story. So here you have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talking about the Qur'an and talking about, you know, his majesty and his creation and how he is the one that is worthy of worship. And then suddenly, هل أتاك حديث Musa, right? Has the story of Musa come to you? Right? So it's like almost like a dramatic shift. But what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants through this surah is to draw the similarities between the life of Musa alayhi salam and the life of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the situation with Fir'aun and his people, and the situation of Quraysh. And this is how we're seeing through all of the stories that have come up in the Meccan period and the Meccan surahs as well. So nothing new with regards to the theme or the purpose, but perhaps some interesting similarities. So for example, one interesting similarity is the way in which Musa alayhi salam first received revelation was similar in way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam receiving revelation. So in verse number 10, إِذْ رَأَى نَارًا فَقَالَ لِأَهْلِهِمْ كُثُوا إِنِّي آنَسْتُ نَارًا لَعَلِّي آتِيكُم مِّنْهَا بِقَبَسٍ أَوْ أَجِدُ عَلَى النَّارِ هُدًى. That he saw on a distant sort of mountain and a valley that there was a fire. And this is when he's traveling from Madian back to Egypt. And so on his way, he sees that fire, and he goes towards that fire. And when he sees that fire, he goes up the hill and into the valley and receives revelation. And that is similar to the Prophet ﷺ receiving revelation upon the mount of, what was the mountain called? I can't remember the mountain, but I know it's Ghar Hira, right? The cave of Hira. But what is the name of that mountain? If anybody could tell me the name of that mountain, I'll be very, very, very grateful. Huh? لا هذا غار ثور في الهجرة. غار هراء لكن الجبل اسمه ماذا نسيته. So please, inshallah, let me know. That's a trivia for you guys. What was the name of the mountain in which Ghar Hira is found? Jazakallahu khair. All right. So that's very similar to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The valley as well. إني أنا ربك فاخلع عليك إنك بالوادي المقدس طوى. You are in a sacred valley, a blessed valley. And obviously the blessed valley is Mecca, right, for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and wherever it is that Musa alayhi salam was. وَنَخْتَرْتُكَ فَاسْتَمِعْ لِمَا يُوحَى. The fact that Musa alayhi salam was chosen from amongst his people, Similarly, the Prophet ﷺ was also chosen. إِنَّنِي أَنَا اللَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنَا فَاعْبُدْنِي وَأَقِمِ الصَّلَاةَ لِذِكْرِي. The same type of commands, the same type of guidance and message was given to the Prophet ﷺ as was given to Musa. إِنَّ السَّاعَةَ آتِيَةٌ أَكَادُ أُخْفِيهَا لِتُجْزَى كُلُّ نَفْسٍ بِمَا تَسْعَى. Verily, the hour is on its way. It's right. It's about to happen. أَكَادُ أُخْفِيهَا. I am about to reveal it. لِتُجْزَى كُلُّ نَفْسٍ بِمَا تَسْعَى. So that all of the people who are exerting efforts can be rewarded or punished for whatever their efforts are. And then there's a little conversation, right, in this section. وَمَا تِلْكَ بِيَمِينِكَ يَا مُوسَى, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he asks Musa alayhi salam, what is that in your right hand? And obviously he was carrying a stick with him, right? And this is beautiful, right, because it's a conversation that happens between Musa and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah asks him one thing, what is that in your right hand? And the answer to which is, my stick, right? That's all that Musa alayhi salam had to say. So he says, hiya asaya, right? It is my stick. But then he goes on, atawakkau alayha. I use it to sort of lean on and to walk with and to assist me. Wa ahushu biha ala ghanami. And I use it to herd my sheep. وَلِيَ فِيهَا مَآرِبُ أُخْرَى. And I have like other uses for it. You know, if you want to know, I can tell you about them too. And this is like, so the Mufassirun have always talked about this ayah, about how beautiful it is, because the Musa alayhi salam, when he was given the opportunity to speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he wished to elongate that conversation to as long as possible, right? Until he felt shy that he had perhaps said too much and said a lot more than what was warranted to say. So his shyness was like, وَلِيَ فِيهَا مَآرِبُ أُخْرَى. I have other uses, but I know you haven't asked me about them, but you know, I really want to tell you about them. SubhanAllah. It shows like the love that Musa alayhi salam he had for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the connection that he had for him. And that's how we should be in our du'as as well. So when we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we shouldn't be afraid to like, you know, ask him, you know, the basic things, and Allah give me Jannah, Allah save him from the hellfire. Whilst we, you know, we ask him of those things too, ask him for as much as you possibly can ask him for, right? When you stand in prayer, stand for as long as you possibly can to stand in prayer for, right? Don't be content with just reciting Surah Al-Ikhlas and then going to ruku', guys. You know, try and recite as much as possible, because you're in a conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when you stand in front of him in prayer. So anyway, the whole thing about the stick and the hand and stuff like that, that's all sort of documented in this particular part. So he sent in verse number 43, اذهبا إلى فرعون إنه طغى. Oh, sorry, before that, I know Mamiji loves to hear the du'as of the Qur'an. So one of the most famous du'as that we all recite before we're given a speech is the dua of Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, the dua of Musa alayhi salam, when he says, رَبِّ اشْرَحْ لِي صَدْرِي وَيَسِّرْ لِي أَمْرِي وَاحْلُلْ عُقْدَةً مِّن لِسَانِي يَفْقَهُ قَوْلِي. Oh Allah, open my heart, right? So provide for me the inspiration that I require in order to give da'wah to Fir'aun and his people. وَيَسِّرْ لِي أَمْرِي, and make my affair easy for me, whatever it is that I'm about to embark upon. وَاحْلُلْ عُقْدَةً مِّن لِسَانِي, and the knot in my tongue, undo the knot in my tongue, make me free from the knot in my tongue. And it was said that Musa alayhi salam had a bit of a speech impediment, and that is why he asked Harun to be from amongst his helpers and his followers, so that because he was afsahu minni lisana, he was more eloquent and more able to speak with talaqa, as they say. وَاحْلُلْ عُقْدَةً مِّن لِسَانِي يَفْقَهُ قَوْلِي, so that my speech is understood. So that's also mentioned here in this particular part. So Musa and Harun are then sent to Fir'aun. فَقُولَا لَهُ قَوْلًا لَيِّنًا لَعَلَّهُ يَتَذَكَّرُ أَوْ يَخْشَى. So say to him a soft and good word, right? Approach him softly and gently with things that he is familiar with things that he knows, and so that he's not sort of like, you're not harsh and abrupt, which is exactly the same way as the Prophet ﷺ approached Quraysh. They had the same fears as the Prophet ﷺ. قَالَ رَبَّنَا إِنَّنَا نَخَافُ أَن يَفْرُطَ عَلَيْنَا أَوْ أَن يَطْغَى. We fear that they will overcome us and overpower us, or they will be oppressive towards us, they will harm us in some way. And this was the same fears that the Prophet ﷺ had when immediately he came out with this da'wah and people laughed at him and took the mickey out of him and started to throw stones at him. The same arguments are brought up as well. قال فما بال القرون الأولى. When they come and they tell him about Allah and they tell him about Tawheed, he asks about the previous generations, right? This is what we found our forefathers upon, was a statement of Quraysh, right? Our fathers did this. Are they going to Jahannam? What about your father, O Prophet of Allah? Is he going to Jahannam? And all these other arguments. It's the same arguments that Fir'aun makes. فَمَا بَالُ الْقُرُونِ الْأُولَى. What about those previous generations that came before us that worshipped what we worshipped and are upon what we are upon? And interesting enough though, right? Musa alayhi salam in this particular part, right? He doesn't actually address the concerns of Fir'aun. قَالَ عِلْمُهَا عِنْدَ رَبِّي فِي كِتَابٍ. The knowledge of those guys, that's with Allah. Don't ask me about that. لا يضل ربي ولا ينسى. Allah is never misguided, nor does he ever forget. He knows exactly what's happened. But then he goes and he switches the conversation back to its purpose. الذي جعل لكم الأرض مهدا. He goes on to describe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his blessings and his creation and what he has done for Fir'aun and his people. Right? Amazing. You know, how to give da'wah. And all of this is strengthening the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his resolve, his own resolve with regards to his own call to the Quraysh. Same threats as well with regards to the Sahara, those magicians who ended up entering into the religion of Musa alayhi salam. The same sort of threats that the Quraysh gave to those who had entered into the religion of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Right? فلأقطعن أيديكم وأرجلكم من خلاف ولأصلبنكم في جذوع النخل ولتعلمن أينا أشد عذابا وأبقى. That I will surely cut their hands off and their legs off. So I will cut their hands off and legs, the hands and their legs on opposite sides. So the left hand and the right foot, or the right hand and the left foot. And I will crucify them upon the stumps of palm trees. Right. So I will subject them to a heinous sort of punishment, and I will what's the word for it? You know, I will put them through hardship, for lack of a better word. The words have seemed to have gone out of my mind there for a second. Anyway, so it's the same threats that the Quraysh were giving to the Muslimun who followed the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Look, we're going to punish you, and we're going to torture you, and we're going to do X, Y, Z to you. And then they did actually do those things, and they did actually kill a lot of the followers of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, just as the followers of Musa and the magicians had also been killed by Fir'aun. And then the resolve that was shown by the magicians who had just entered into Islam, and they were firm upon their deen. They were like, look, do whatever it is that you please to do with us. We are firm upon our deen. Strengthening the resolve of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. Look, whatever trouble that comes your way from Quraysh, know that the Sahara of Fir'aun, the magicians, they also entered into Islam and received even worse than what you are receiving, but they held strong and they were steadfast and they believed until their last breath. So be the same as they are. Okay. And then the story ends with the issue of Samiri. Samiri was they say he was a person from Bani Israel. And when Musa alayhi salam, he went to receive the Torah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he went for 40 days, and while he was gone, he left Harun with his people. And while Harun was with his people, the Bani Israel ended up taking the calf as the golden calf as a god besides Allah to worship. And it was a man called Samiri who sort of encouraged them to do that and was the first to do that. And so his story is documented here as well, from verse number 85 to I think 104 roughly, or a little bit before that. Anyway, Rabbi Zidni Ilma is the dua that is coming up here as well, which is in verse number 114, and it is the only dua in which we are sort of told that the Prophet ﷺ is requested to ask Allah of an increase of. The only thing that we're supposed to ask an increase of is knowledge. That is the only thing, right? Is the only thing that we are asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala an increase of. And the reason for that is because knowledge yazidu bil infaq, right? It increases the more you give it, right? So the more you sit and you teach people, the more you yourself recognize and learn, right? The more, but whereas money and wealth in general, the more you give, the less you'll have. The more you spend, the less you'll have, right? So yanqusu bil infaq, right? And on top of that, what truly owns you? What do you truly own? Do you truly own your wealth, or does your wealth truly own you? Right? You're constantly worried about it, what's going to happen to it, right? You're spending so much on insurance so that nothing bad happens to it. And if something does happen to it, you can always replace it, right? And come up with something new. Right? It puts in your heart a worry and a fear. right? Whereas ilm, it puts in your heart a sakina, peace and tranquility, right? So yeah, you don't actually own the things that you think you own. All right, and then in the end of the surah, there is a big emphasis on salah, right? And this is an early Meccan surah as well. Very, very big emphasis on salah. فَاصْبِرْ عَلَى مَا يَقُولُونَ وَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ قَبْلَ طُلُوعِ الشَّمْسِ وَقَبْلَ غُرُوبِهَا. Right, so be patient on what they are saying to you and glorify your Lord in all times of the day. وَمِنْ آنَاءِ اللَّيْلِ فَسَبِّحْ وَأَطْرَافَ النَّهَارِ لَعَلَّكَ تَرْضَى. Right, and also in various parts of the day, وَأْمُرْ أَهْلَكَ بِالصَّلَاةِ وَاصْطَبِرْ عَلَيْهَا, and command your family with prayer. Encourage your family to pray with you. وَاصْطَبِرْ عَلَيْهَا, and be forbearing and patient on that. So keep doing it. لَا نَسْأَلُكَ رِزْقًا. We don't ask you any provisions. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not asking you for any provisions. نَحْنُ نَرْزُقُكَ. Rather, it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that provides for you. وَالْعَاقِبَةُ لِلتَّقْوَى, and the end result for those who have taqwa. Okay, now we've technically reached where we're supposed to be, which is chapter number 17, or part number 17 of the Qur'an. And we come to the chapter of Surah Al-Anbiya. Now, Surah Al-Anbiya is called Al-Anbiya because the fact that many Anbiya are mentioned in it. So from the verse 48 to 91, pretty much all of the Anbiya that we've heard previously in other surahs have been mentioned here. Not in any grave detail or anything like that, but they've been mentioned. And so the surah was called Al-Anbiya after them. It is a Meccan surah, and it is considered a very late Meccan surah. So it's close to the Hijrah. So at the beginning, it starts off with اقترب للناس حسابهم وهم في غفلة معرضون. Straight away, right? What an opening, subhanallah. The hour, اقترب للناس حسابهم. People's accountability, the account of people is coming close. Right? And what he means by that is the Day of Judgment. The Day of Judgment has come close. وهم في غفلة معرضون. Right? But the people, they are in a state of heedlessness, turning away, right? Too busy watching Netflix, on YouTube all day, right? Too busy worrying about keeping up with so-and-so, too busy worrying about, the rizq of the dunya. So many things turning them away. اقترب للناس حسابهم وهم في غفلة معرضون. Excuse me. So in the first 50 odd verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rebuts the arguments that have been brought forth against the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam by Quraysh. So some of the issues about how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a man, right? And why wasn't he an angel that was sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And why is it that he speaks the dialect that we all know and can understand? Why doesn't he speak some strange foreign language or something like that, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he addresses those. وَمَا جَعَلْنَاهُمْ جَسَدًا لَا يَأْكُلُونَ الطَّعَامَ وَمَا كَانُوا خَالِدِينَ. None of the previous messages were brought as something that was other than a human being. They were human beings who used to walk around amongst people and used to eat and drink, just as Isa alayhi salam used to eat and drink, right? So, negating his divinity there. The concept of the akhirah, and there being such thing as an akhirah, which is going to be heavily hit home in the next surah as well, in Surah Al-Hajj. So that's the first half of this surah, I'd say. Then from verse number 48 to 91, there is mention of the prophets. So let's have a look. وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا مُوسَى وَهَارُونَ الْفُرْقَانَ وَضِيَاءً وَذِكْرًا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. So it begins with Musa and Harun, and it goes on to Ibrahim. And actually for Ibrahim, there's a sort of an extended story of his. So the element or the part of the life of Ibrahim alayhi salam, which is between him and his people, where the Ibrahim alayhi salam, he goes and he destroys the idols that his people used to worship. And he destroys all of the idols except one, which was the biggest idol and was considered the head of all of the other idols, right? So his people went out, and they went out on some expedition, or they went out on a hunting trip, or something took them out. And when they came back to town, they found that all of their idols had been destroyed, except for one of them. And so they asked who had done it, and it was Ibrahim alayhi salam. So they said, قالوا سمعنا فتى يذكرهم يقال له إبراهيم. That there is a guy called Ibrahim. He is suspected to have done this. So they went to Ibrahim. They're like, "What have you done? How dare you have done this?" So Ibrahim's response to them was, "Look, it wasn't me. It was the big idol that did it. قال بل فعله كبيرهم هذا فاسألوهم إن كانوا ينطقون. It was the big one, the big idol, the head of all the idols. He is the one who broke all of these other idols, right? Ask him. Ask this idol and ask the other idols that have been destroyed if they have the ability to converse with you, to be in contact with you. So obviously they know, right, that this is impossible, that these things are made of wood and made of stone. How on earth are they ever going to speak to human beings? And they made them by their own hands. So wagwan. فَرَجَعُوا إِلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ فَقَالُوا إِنَّكُمْ أَنْتُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ. So they returned to their own selves, right? As if to say that when truth and when the rebuttal is given to them, they recognize that the truth of what this person is saying to them is there, and they recognize that what they are saying is actually true, and they recognize the falsehood that they are upon, and they realize it in their own selves, right? فَقَالُوا إِنَّكُمْ أَنْتُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ. That verily you guys truly are. You are wrongdoers. We are upon misguidance. Subhanallah. ثُمَّ نُكِّسُوا عَلَى رُؤُوسِهِمْ لَقَدْ عَلِمْتَ مَا هَؤُلَاءِ يَنْطِقُونَ. So then they, sorry about this, they then admit that that truly that these idols, they don't actually speak, they don't actually say anything. قَالَ أَفَتَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ مَا لَا يَنْفَعُكُمْ شَيْئًا وَلَا يَضُرُّكُمْ. Do you worship something that will not benefit you in the slightest, nor will it harm you in any way, shape or form? How could you leave Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for something like that? And so their reply was, حَرِّقُوهُ وَانْصُرُوا آلِهَتَكُمْ إِن كُنْتُمْ فَاعِلِينَ. Burn this guy and come to the aid of your gods if you are to do anything. If there's anything that you're going to do, then burn this guy and come to the aid of your gods. As if your gods need that type of aid, right? SubhanAllah. And so they built the fire and they threw Ibrahim alayhi salam in the fire, and the fire was made cool and cold for Ibrahim, and it didn't touch him in the slightest. Lots of things about whether Ibrahim alayhi salam stayed there for a long time, or whether he stayed there for a short time, or whether he just landed and then came out. That remains to be seen, and it's not really important. But what's important was the miraculous nature of the fact that he went into the fire and he was unharmed, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved him from that. And there are other sort of other prophets mentioned as well in here. Okay, we'll go to the end of the verse, the end of the surah. So in verse number 105, وَلَقَدْ كَتَبْنَا فِي الزَّبُورِ مِنْ بَعْدِ الذِّكْرِ أَنَّ الْأَرْضَ يَرِثُهَا عِبَادِيَ الصَّالِحُونَ. Okay, this is something that I want to raise with you guys, right? And it's quite an interesting point, and it's something that I've heard for a long time as well, even when I was growing up, and didn't really have that much of a culture with regards to the deen. But anyway, this is what this verse is about. وَلَقَدْ كَتَبْنَا فِي الزَّبُورِ. And we have written in the Zabur, right, in the Psalms of Dawood, مِنْ بَعْدِ الذِّكْرِ, after the remembrance, أَنَّ الْأَرْضَ يَرِثُهَا عِبَادِيَ الصَّالِحُونَ. That this earth will be inherited by the righteous servants of Allah. عِبَادِيَ الصَّالِحُونَ. My servants, my righteous servants, right? And this is very sort of closely connected to the verse in the Bible, I think it's in Matthew, that the meek will inherit the earth. I can't remember the verse now off the top of my head now. Remind me of it, guys, if you can. But it's something like give glad tidings to the meek, for very they shall inherit the earth, or something like that. Or behold, or be good to the humble, or be good to the meek, for very they shall inherit the earth. So it got me questioning, right? Like, if what's the difference between the righteous servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inheriting the earth and the meek inheriting the earth? And it got me to question that these verses are so similar, right? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that these people will inherit the earth, and perhaps in the Injil back in the day, or in the Psalms back in the day, he actually said that, but obviously, whatever's happened to the Bible has happened to the Bible. But whatever the case may be, they are extremely similar. And I looked into it, right? And I found that the word meek, that's the translation of whatever it was in Latin or in Hebrew, from what it was translated into, right? Because it was translated into English later on. But what meek actually meant was it was a characteristic of the one who has the passion of resentment. So he has the ability to enact vengeance right, and act upon his anger if he wills, but he has that under control. And he's therefore tranquil and untroubled, right? So he has this serenity about him. Even though he has the ability to enact a vengeance, he doesn't. Even though when he has the power to harm others, even if it's rightly or wrongly, he doesn't do so. He holds it back because that is the right thing to do, and that is the righteous thing to do, right? So meek, we get that kind of like understanding that it's you know, you're weak and you're unable and you're kind of like, you know, miskeen, right? But that's not the case of what it's supposed to have been sort of what it's supposed to have meant. And here it's kind of the same thing. Ibadi as-salihun aren't weak and meager, right? They're not people who are easily oppressed, right? And they're not easily overcome. And even if they were to be oppressed, they have resolve and they stand firm, in what they believe in, and they go through all the necessary trials and tribulations that they are going to go through in order to stand up for what is true and what is revealed to them by their Lord, right? That's the ibadi as-salihun. And their strength is derived from their spirituality, from their prayers, from their connection to Allah, from their du'as, from their salah, from their zakat, from their charity, from their enjoining good and forbidding evil, and all that sort of stuff. All of these things that are ordained by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is what makes them strong, right? So a believer, ibadi as-salihun, those righteous servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, are those who have courage, right? And if we're talking about, you know, at the beginning of the previous surahs, and you know, the difficulties in which the Muslims went through, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told them to have resolve, and how he tells them the stories of the prophets that came before them to show them that, look, no prophet was ever sent before you except that he went through some form of difficulty and some form of hardship, but he persevered. And when he came through that hardship, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he blessed him with a response to his message, right? People either believed or turned away, right? So that is, I think that's something that I wanted to share with you guys with regards to the similarities between that and the verse of the Bible, and a little bit of clarity on what that gives to that verse in the Bible as well, inshallah. And then obviously the true reason why the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sent is actually mentioned in this surah as well. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. أَدَاةُ حَصْرٍ وَقَصْرٍ, right? It's almost as if that we haven't sent you, O Messenger of Allah, for any other purpose except as a mercy to mankind. Allahu Akbar. And that concludes Surah Al-Hajj. Surah Al-Anbiya. And we are going to go on to Surah Al-Hajj now, inshallah ta'ala. Let's have a look at what is happening in the comments and questions. Okay. Ayman is asking, since the lockdown has been extended until June, how will the mosque serve the community moving forward? Allahu Akbar. What a challenge that is, inshallah ta'ala. Hopefully we can do a lot of this stuff, a lot more, inshallah, and in a variety of different ways. And we can perhaps try to introduce other things, inshallah ta'ala. Your ideas are always helpful, and your support is always needed, inshallah ta'ala. This is not something, so services to the community cannot be done just by one person. Although you see me in front of the screen all the time, or on your screens all the time, it's not actually me doing all the work. It is a lot of other people behind the scenes, mashallah, that are putting their weight, without whom none of this could actually happen. So inshallah, if you guys want to get involved, get in touch with us, inshallah, and we can, you know, deliver the services that, you know, are required to be delivered for the community, inshallah, in this lockdown, in innovative and new ways, inshallah. Maureen is asking regarding the Lord of Mercy established on the throne. Is this a literal throne or a metaphorical meaning? I'm going to say what Imam Malik has said in the past, that you know, الاستواء معلوم والكيف مجهول والسؤال عنه بدعة وما أراك إلا صاحب فتنة فأخرجوه من المجلس. That the istiwa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala establishing himself on the throne, is a literal metaphorical. This is only known to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, its reality of which we are unaware of. But the fact that it has happened, or it is done, that is what we believe in, and that is what we recognize. And we don't question how, or the intricacies of what it was like, because that is then sort of like, you know, picturing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in an image. وَكُلُّ مَا خَطَرَ بِبَالِكَ فَاللَّهُ بِخِلَافِ ذَلِكَ. Whatever comes to your mind, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the opposite of that. Do we have to make ghusl before reading some verses of the Qur'an? What about Qur'an phone apps? Is this treated as a Qur'an mushaf? That's a good question. So, making ghusl before reading some of the verses of the Qur'an? No, you don't have to make ghusl before, unless you are in a state of janaba, which is after your monthly cycle, or from the hadath al-akbar. Then only then do you need to make ghusl, but otherwise you can just make wudu before you recite the Qur'an or before you touch the Qur'an. You don't necessarily have to have wudu either to recite the Qur'an, so you can recite the Qur'an without wudu. But to touch it and to hold it, then you need to have wudu. Phone apps are a little bit sort of different. So there's a sort of two ways you can look at it. Either you can look at it as this thing is a phone and it will always be a phone and it can never be a mushaf, even if the verses of the Qur'an appear on the screen. So it's still not considered a mushaf, so you don't need to have wudu for it to hold it, even whilst on the Qur'an app, for example. And another opinion is that if you have the Qur'an app open, then that is when you need to have wudu for it. Yeah, Allahu a'lam bis-sawab, but I tend to lean to the first opinion. Jabal Noor, houses Hira, Jazakallah khair. Tamur with the lifeline right there, mashallah. Alhamdulillah. Oh, there's so many others actually in the comment section. Alhamdulillah. Gulid, Hussein, the judge is here. Ashraf as well. Yeah, all of you guys, mashallah. Jazakallah khair. That skipped my mind for a second there. But alhamdulillah, I have my trusted aides to help me. What is the meaning and background of the verse? No, we held the truth against falsehood. بل يقذف الحق بل نقذف بالحق على الباطل فيدمغه فإذا هو زاهق. Is this specific to the Prophet's da'wah? We held the truth against falsehood. No, this is universal. Universal. So the truth, whenever it comes, it always obliterates falsehood. Always, without a shadow of a doubt. قل جاء الحق وزهق الباطل إن الباطل كان زهوقا. Right? The truth has come and it has obliterated falsehood. Falsehood is in its nature there to be obliterated. So it's all that's universal. One of my teachers many years ago said that when Umar ibn al-Khattab broke into the house and attacked his sister, somewhere in the tussle, Khabbab had intervened and beaten Umar ibn al-Khattab up. Is this true or just a theory? I haven't heard that before, so I don't know. But I haven't read that in the Seerah of Umar in any of the books that I've read, unfortunately. So you may know something that I don't know, or that may not be true. So I'm not sure about that. Or that may have to be looked into. But I doubt it, because Khabbab wasn't a strong guy. He wasn't like, as strong as Umar. Umar would take him nicely. Radiyallahu anhum jami'an. So I highly doubt that. Is the calf worship linked in any way to why Hindus worship cows? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know. Prophet Ibrahim destroys idols. Is it permitted for us to destroy idol statues that are worshipped in Muslim countries? Ibrahim alayhi salam, he destroyed it out of a hikmah, through a wisdom, right? And there was a point to him destroying it. So his objective wasn't to destroy, like the end goal wasn't to have the idols destroyed. Otherwise he would have destroyed the big one as well. Rather, what he wanted to do was place an argument to the mushrikun that, look, what are you guys doing? And it doesn't make sense, right? And because you have deviated from the way of Allah, you have introduced practices that are oppressive to the weak and the needy from amongst you. So come back to Allah and the way of Allah, and adopt what is halal and what is haram from what He sees as halal and haram for you, so that you may be just amongst mankind. Right? That was the end goal, and the means in which He used was to break the idols. So that wasn't the goal. So if we go and we start breaking idols, what are we doing it for? Right? Is that the be all and end all? Is this our da'wah? Like, are we bring them to Islam? Is that going to bring them to Islam or not? So yeah, no, this doesn't. It doesn't give us free reign to go around and destroying other people's things, even if we believe it to be false. Assalamu alaikum. Do you know Urdu Hindi language? I'm going to expose myself and say no. Is it necessary to read all 20 rakat tarawih? Or that's a very strange question, though. It's got nothing to do with like anything that's come up, right? Is it necessary to read all 20 rakat tarawih, or may we can increase or decrease in it? Yeah, that's sa'a. You can increase, you can decrease, you can read 20, you can read more than 20, you can read less than 20. It's all good, inshallah. If you make wudu and you have doubts about it, if you covered every part which needs to be covered with water during wudu. If you have doubts with regard to whether you've done your wudu properly or not, does your wudu count? No, you have to be certain that you've washed every part of your body. So let's say I'm washing my, I've done my madmada, my istinshaq, so I wash my mouth and wash my nose and wash my face, and I get to my arms, right? Wash my arms, and then I wipe my hair, and I think, hold on a minute, I don't know if I got my elbow fully or not. So you make sure you do it again, just to make sure, inshallah. But don't let that ever go to the level of waswasa, right? And waswasa is basically when you're constantly in doubt about everything that you're doing. Oh, did I do my wudu right? Even though you've done it perfectly right. And even if you doubt, you do it again. And then even once you've done it again, you think, wait a minute, did I do that one right? And then you do it again and again and again. That's all from shaitan. Because he wants to make ibadah difficult for you. So he makes you question every little detail. Did I do this right? Did I do that right? So it becomes unbearable and overbearing, and you just don't want to do it anymore because it's just too much for you to do. So don't ever allow shaitan to do that to you. Right, so be sure in your wudu, but don't go to the level of waswasa. Another question, if you have doubts about if you prayed salah, what should you do in that situation? Yeah, again, so you have to be certain that, I can't really picture as to whether you would be uncertain about your prayers or not. But yeah, you have to be certain that you prayed. Inshallah. Okay. Faisal has a question. Faisal, mashallah. He's in town today and he's asking questions. Regarding destroying idols, Allah says in the Qur'an not to abuse their gods so that they don't abuse your God. Allah, mashallah, istinbat. Shuft, mashallah. Al-hikmah wal-fiqh, the understanding, mashallah. So yes, this goes back to the verse that we took way back in, I forget the surah now. This was a while back, I think a week ago we took this. About, وَلَا تَسُبُّ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ فَسُبُّ اللَّهَ عَدْوًا بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. That do not insult the gods or the people who worship other gods in what they do, so that they insult Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala out of animosity and anger against you, just to get you back, right? بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ, without actually having any knowledge of what they're truly saying to you. So that's also the case with regards to destroying the idols. Are you going to destroy the idols just so that they can come and wage war against you and fight you and kill you? So yeah. Sometimes I forget which rak'ah I'm on. Do I need to redo my salah from the beginning or just carry on adding one more rak'ah? No, if you forget which rak'ah you're upon, you always consider yourself one less than what you think you're upon. So let's say I don't know if I'm on my third or my fourth rak'ah, you always consider yourself on your third. I don't know if I'm on my first or my second rak'ah, you always consider yourself on your first, like that. And then you make sujood al-sahw afterwards. Just in case you have added or taken away. Okay, are there any more questions? We can go on briefly with Surah Al-Hajj, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. If a husband and wife meet, is it must to take ghusl with soap? Us women to wash our hair with soaps, the hard water, it cuts our hair. It cuts our hair. If a husband and wife meet, oh, okay, I see. MashaAllah. Tabarakallah. This is from Iman, right? That you don't actually explicitly say certain things, right? And this is from the hishma and the hayat that you have of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So beautifully put question, mashallah. It is wajib to do ghusl after you meet, after a husband and wife meet, with soap if they wish, but the last wash of theirs has to be done with pure water. With no mixture of any soap or anything like that. So you do your ghusl, and you can either do it first with all water, so you've done your ritual ghusl, and then you can wash yourself with soap afterwards, so that you get that extra vitalized skin. Or you can do that the opposite way. So you can do the soap first, and then after you've washed all the soap off and everything is done from your body, then you can wash yourself with water and consider that part as the ghusl. So either way. Can we do aqiqah? Okay, so I'm gonna wait a minute. Can we do aqiqah, sacrifice of animal at birth of baby, after a week later? Yeah, you can do it a week later. Or is it necessary to do it within a week? It's not necessary to do it within a week. You can do it within a week, and you can do it after that as well. It's not sort of like there's not a set time frame for your aqiqah that you have to do it at this time. And if you don't do it this time, then it's a sin and haram and so on and so forth. Nothing like that. Okay, so let us go now on to Surah Al-Hajj, inshallah ta'ala. So Surah Al-Hajj it's a bit of a precarious surah because it's not known whether it is Makki or Madani, right? So there's a lot of speculation as to whether it is Makki or Madani, because there are ayat in it that are Madani and there are ayat in it that are Makki. The Makki ayat sort of outnumber in some ways the Madani ayat, but the Madani ayat are also in there, and there's some ikhtilaf as to whether certain ayat are Makki or Madani as well. So it's one of those surahs that was revealed right about the time of the Hijrah, right? So just before the Hijrah, parts of it were revealed, and right after the Hijrah, parts of it were revealed as well. So it opens as the previous surah had opened, and as the previous surah had finished as well, about the a grave description of the Day of Judgment. Ya ayyuhan nas ittaqu rabbakum inna zalzalat as-sa'ati shay'un 'azim. O people, O mankind, every single one of you, be mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Verily, the earthquakes and the shaking of the Day of Judgment, shay'un 'azim, is something awful, something huge, something that is insurmountable. You can't get your heads around it, and it's coming. يوم ترونها تذهل كل مرضعة عما أرضعت. Right? The woman who is suckling will as if to throw away the child that is on her breast. وتضع كل ذات حمل حملها. And everybody who is expecting to give birth will, the children or the child in their womb will just fall out there and then, out of sheer fear and awe of that day. وَتَرَى النَّاسَ سُكَارَى وَمَا هُمْ بِسُكَارَى. And you see people walking as if they are drunk, but they are not drunk. وَلَكِنَّ عَذَابَ اللَّهِ شَدِيدٌ. Rather, the punishment of your Lord is extremely severe. Right? What a picture to open up the surah with, subhanAllah. So this surah is kind of revealed to sort of the mushrikun. So it's very, very severe against them in terms of the warning against them. It addresses in one or two ayat those Muslims who are very sort of flaky with regards to their iman, right? So when good things happen to them, they're happy and alhamdulillah, Allah has blessed us, and Islam is great. And when they go through hardship and difficulty, they question, why is Allah doing this to us? Is Islam the truth when we have to go through all this hardship, right? So that is also addressed, and the believers are also addressed with regards to their resolve and the permission of fighting against those who have oppressed them is now given. SubhanAllah. So after 13 years of persecution, killing, migrating, trying to run away, trying to call, but then, being marginalized, being discriminated against, being hurt and harmed, possessions being taken by force, all of these things happening to them for a 13-year period, and they have to be patient. And Allah is telling them, no, you don't fight, and you don't raise a hand, and you speak to them with a good word, and you call them with wisdom and in a way which is befitting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you don't harm them, and you don't cuss their idol worship or their idols so that they cuss Allah. And all of these things Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling them and instilling in them, that you find patience and perseverance in your salah, and you are constant in your prayers, and you make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when you go through adversity, you turn to Allah, and you don't turn to any of the means of the dunya. All of these things Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is instilling in the companions and in the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam for 13 years straight. Finally, after all of those things now are instilled in them, they are part and parcel of their very being, right? It is a state of being, right, that they are in. This is how they are. That when the hardship and adversity comes to them, that they turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala immediately, and they don't despair, and they wait for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's assistance, right? The call is given, and the permission is given for them now to defend themselves. If someone now transgresses against you physically, you can now defend yourself. Okay. So the message of those who are whose iman is wavering is very interesting, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in verse number 11, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَعْبُدُ اللَّهَ عَلَى حَرْفٍ. there are from those people who worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as if they are on the edge, on the precipice, right? The edge of leaving, right? They're at the door, right? So you come into the masjid and then you have someone who's praying at the door, right? Or who's standing at the door. If he hears what is being said on the minbar, like he agrees with it and he likes it, he'll come and he'll sit and he'll pray. And if he hears something that he doesn't like, he'll turn away and he'll leave from the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So from the people are those who worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala like they're on the edge. If goodness comes to them, فَإِنْ أَصَابَهُ خَيْرٌ اطْمَأَنَّ بِهِ. If goodness comes to you, they are happy. And they're like, yes, Islam, mashallah, this is a beautiful religion and Allah has made things so clear, and alhamdulillah for the blessing of Islam, right? وَإِنْ أَصَابَتْهُ فِتْنَةٌ انْقَلَبَ عَلَى وَجْهِ. But if a fitna comes to them, right? If they are persecuted, if they are marginalized, if they are oppressed, right? They think, subhanAllah, Islam is like, it's so hard. It's so oppressive. Do we have to be like this? Do we have to do these things? I'm sure Allah didn't mean in the Qur'an that we were supposed to be like this, or the Prophet ﷺ didn't mean in his sunnah that we were supposed to be like this. We can be, a little bit, not Muslim. But so kind of like those kind of people, right? So this is their situation. When goodness befalls them, they're happy and they're content with Islam. And when bad things happen to them, they hate Islam. خَسِرَ الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ. These people have lost both the dunya and the akhirah, right? You're Muslim, but you're not Muslim in the world. And in the akhirah, you're not Muslim, but you claim to be Muslim. SubhanAllah. May Allah protect us, inshallah, and safeguard our iman from being of those people who are on the very edge. Rather, we want to be people who are ulul albab, who are in the very middle, in the very core, in the very center of our deen and our iman, inshallah. Okay. There is a lot of mention of Hajj. In verse number 25 to 37, a lot of the rituals and rites of Hajj are mentioned here. This is obviously because the fact that now the Muslims have been sort of ejected from Mecca. It's almost like they cannot do any of the rituals of the pilgrimage that they would do were they living in Mecca at the time of Dhul Hijjah, right? So they can't do that now because they're out. So it's almost like they're expecting permission from their Lord to go and carry out the Hajj. Rather, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts down is what the Hajj is all about, what the sacrifice is all about, and how the mushrikun have grossly sort of taken all of that stuff out of context and sort of utilized and taken advantage of those who are pilgrims to the sacred house. The permission to fight back comes in verse number 38 and 39. Inna Allah yudafi'u 'anil ladhina amanu. Verily, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is the one who defends those who believe. Inna Allah la yuhibbu kulla khawanin kafur. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not love those who are treacherous and ungrateful. Udhina lilladhina yuqataluna bi'annahum zulimu. Permission has been given to those who have been fought against, and Allah recognizes that they have been treated unjustly. وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى نَصْرِهِمْ لَقَدِيرٌ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for their assistance, is all able. So this is the verse in which it was given to them that it was permissible for them to now defend themselves. Interesting enough, right? So a lot of things are mentioned in this surah, but one thing that it alludes to is that blindness is of many types, right? So there's blindness of the eyes in which you cannot see with, right? There's deafness of the ears in which you cannot hear with. But there is also something with regards to the heart, which you cannot comprehend with, right? And what afflicted the mushrikun and what afflicts those who disbelieve in the message of Islam isn't the fact that they cannot see that it is the truth or they don't hear about it. Rather, it is their hearts that have been blinded to it. Either because of their inghimas fi shahawat, because they are drowning in their desires and they are they are too connected to their dunya to ever leave it. Or because of their pride and arrogance that they do not wish to leave their ways for a way that has been given to them by other than them, which was the same situation as the kuffar of Quraysh, incidentally. The challenge of, so we know about the challenges that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives with regards to the Qur'an, right? Bring a Qur'an like this, bring a verse like this, bring a chapter like this. So there's the challenge of the fly, right? So it's sort of the last parts of this surah. يا أيها الناس ضرب مثل فاستمعوا له. There is a parable in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put in this Qur'an, so listen to it. إن الذين تدعون من دون الله لن يخلقوا ذبابا. Right? ولو اجتمعوا له. That verily those whom you worship besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they cannot even create a fly. Even if they were to all come together in order to create it, right? So no amount of AI, no amount of technology, no amount of your own knowledge is ever going to get you to a place where you're going to be able to create something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created, right? It could look like it, it could act like it could maybe have the outward features of it, but it is never it, right? You cannot create that sustaining sustaining life, right? You may be able to create a robot, but that robot can never beget another robot, right? It cannot give birth to another robot. And a lot of the sort of the AI films, right? They have this concept of robots giving birth to robots and stuff like that. Like Blade Runner, I think that was something like that. That was about that, wasn't it? Anyway, so it's never going to be the case, and that's never going to happen. لَن يَخْلُقُوا ذُبَابًا. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala draws a parable of the dhubab, the fly, right? This disgusting creature that we just shoo away, right? Even this thing that you're shooing away, you cannot even create that, right? It goes on to, like, you know, feces and other things and other types of food, and there's a fly right here, subhanAllah. I'm shooing away, subhanAllah. What a coincidence. Ajib. Ilhamun min Allah, right there, subhanAllah. Okay, and I think we'll stop there, inshallah, because we are pretty much getting close to Maghrib now, inshallah ta'ala. So let us call that a day, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. I hope, inshallah, we have benefited from all that has been said, inshallah ta'ala, and I hope that I have done the ayat of the Qur'an some justice, those that I've touched upon. Please forgive me for any shortcomings that have come forth for me. I know I like to speak, and tend to sort of joke around sometimes, but if I have offended anybody through that, please accept my heartfelt apology. And inshallah, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us to the straight path and keep us steadfast upon it. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us with this Qur'an. Allahumma hdina bil Qur'an, Allahumma hdina bil Qur'an, Allahumma hdina bil Qur'an. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it to the spring of our hearts, in which we find tranquility, peace, and happiness through. اللهم اجعل القرآن ربيع قلوبنا ونور صدورنا وذهاب همنا وجلاء غمنا يا رب العالمين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. ربنا زدنا علما يا رب العالمين. ربنا زدنا علما يا رب العالمين. ربنا زدنا علما يا علام الغيوب يا أكرم الأكرمين. اللهم اغفر لنا ولوالدينا ولإخواننا الذين سبقونا بالإيمان. اللهم اهدنا واهدي بنا واجعلنا سببا لمن اهتدى. اللهم لا تجعلنا فتنة للذين كفروا واغفر لنا ربنا إنك أنت السميع العليم. اللهم تقبل منا صيامنا وقيامنا وركوعنا وسجودنا ودعاءنا يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجعلنا من عتقاء شهر رمضان. اللهم بلغنا ليلة القدر يا أكرم الأكرمين ويا أرحم الراحمين. وصل اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. سبحانك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. آمين آمين. جزاكم الله خير, guys, and I will see you tomorrow, inshallah. A question for you guys, just let me know in the comments. That if we can start from tomorrow onwards to the end of Ramadan from 7:30, that'll be a little bit more helpful, inshallah, for myself. If you guys are okay with that, then that's what we will do. If not, then we can always start at 7:15 as we always have done. Okay, a thumbs up from Alex. Sounds good from Sarah. Okay, cool. Yep, okay, good. All right, inshallah. So, bi'idhnillah, I will see you guys here tomorrow at the ripe time of 7:30. Bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Jazakumullahu khaira, guys. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.